The final stand. The galaxy had long since forgotten humanity. After centuries of relentless war, a deep betrayal by once allied species, and the ultimate destruction of Earth, the once proud human race was reduced to mere whispers, remnants of a forgotten history. Humanity's colonies, scattered across the stars, had all been wiped out, one by one, until there was nothing left but the echoes of a dying civilization. The great empires of the galaxy, the Korlak, the technologically superior Shilith, the secretive and elusive Varia, had eradicated all traces of humanity, leaving behind a dark void where Earth once thrived. But in the farthest, most desolate corners of the universe, there was one who still fought, a lone survivor. Captain Elias Graves, the final soldier of Earth, had watched as his homeworld fell to ruin, as his people were wiped from existence. Yet he never surrendered, never gave up. As the galaxies shifted, and as the universe moved on, Elias clung to his mission, the survival of humanity's legacy. His story would not end in silence. For years, Elias had wandered the farthest reaches of space, a ghost in the dark, unnoticed by the galactic powers. He lived in the shadows, biding his time, training and preparing for a day that he knew would come. The galaxy had become complacent. The empires of the stars had grown too comfortable in their dominance, believing humanity was nothing but a myth, a fleeting nightmare of a long-forgotten past. But Elias knew better. He knew that Earth's spirit was not so easily extinguished. In day, the universe would remember the cost of underestimating humanity, and he would be the one to make them pay. The silent threat Elias's survival had been a story of grit and endurance, and it had led him to an uncharted planet, far from the prying eyes of the Empire. Here, he made his home in isolation, a planet that had not known the touch of galactic conquest. It was a place where he could train, where he could hone his skills and tactics, and where he could prepare for the inevitable day when the galaxy would come to hunt him down. But it was not his own fate he was concerned with. It was the fate of the galaxy itself. Through years of quiet observation, Elias began to notice a rising tide of unrest. The Korlak, once feared for their sheer military might, were not simply expanding. They were preparing for something darker, something more insidious. They had grown accustomed to ruling by force, but a new threat had emerged from the shadows, a destructive force far older than any of the galaxy's empires. The Harbinger Elias had uncovered records of this entity during his time in hiding. The Harbinger was a force of annihilation, a being that had destroyed entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. It was an entity beyond physical form, a cosmic force that existed to bring chaos, to unmake the universe's stability. The Korlak were merely pawns in its game. It had wiped out humanity because they posed a threat to its ultimate goal, the wise domination of everything in existence. And yet humanity had been erased from the galactic stage. The universe had forgotten why the Harbinger feared Earth. Now, Elias knew he was the only one who could remind the stars of that fear. The reign of the Korlak Elias's investigations led him to the Yelotha, a race of proud warriors that had once ruled their corner of the galaxy. But now, the Yelotha were nothing more than slaves to the Korlak Empire. Their homeworld ravaged, their people scattered and oppressed. The Korlak had already conquered their planet, leaving behind a shadow of what once was. But in the ruins of their cities, Elias found something that reignited the spark of hope in him. There were still fighters among them, and with their help, perhaps he could turn the tide. The Yelotha had suffered under the Korlak's ruthless control for centuries, their warriors broken, their spirits crushed. But Elias, with his experience and knowledge of humanity's ability to rise from the ashes, began to teach them how to fight back. He taught them the old ways of warfare, tactics, that allowed small groups to strike against a far stronger opponent, exploiting weaknesses and sowing confusion. And through every battle, every skirmish, the Yelotha began to remember what it meant to be free. For the first time in a long time, they started winning. Elias's leadership and human ingenuity allowed them to defeat the Korlak in small but significant ways. They turned the tables on their oppressors, using their own arrogance against them. They became the shadow in the dark that the Korlak could never quite catch. The universe began to take notice. The last human had returned, and he was no longer alone. The final weapon, but even as the Yolotha began to reclaim their world and their pride, Elias knew the true battle had yet to come. The Korlak were just a distraction. The real threat, the true enemy, lay deeper in the shadows. Elias had uncovered ancient texts that spoke of the Harbinger, the entity that had shaped the galaxy's fate long before any empire came to power. This being had destroyed entire star systems, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. And now, the Harbinger had set its sights on the last vestiges of humanity. The final showdown would not be fought with armies or weapons alone. Elias had learned that the Harbinger could not be defeated by conventional means. It was a force of nature, beyond the scope of even the most advanced technology. The only way to defeat it was to return to the core of humanity's power, the indomitable will to survive, to adapt, and to fight against impossible odds. Elias rallied every last remaining species willing to stand beside him. The Yolotha, the Shlith, the Varia, all of them united by a single unbreakable truth. The Harbinger's reign of terror had to end, or the galaxy would be doomed. The Harbinger's wrath. The final confrontation took place on the ruins of the Korlak's capital world, a planet scarred by years of warfare and despair. It was here that Elias would face the Harbinger, the entity that had destroyed everything humanity had fought for. As the cosmic force materialized before him, its form shifting, its presence bending reality itself, Elias did not hesitate. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. "You think you can defeat me, human?" The Harbinger's voice boomed, echoing in Elias's mind. "You are the last of a species that was weak, insignificant. Your time has passed. You are nothing but a blip in the grand design of the universe. I wiped you out for a reason. And now, you will serve as an example to those who dare to challenge me." Elias stood his ground, his eyes locked on the Harbinger. "You were wrong," he said, his voice unwavering. "You thought we were weak because you never understood us. We don't give up, we don't die easily, and you've made the mistake of underestimating humanity. The battle that followed was beyond anything the universe had ever witnessed. The Harbinger unleashed waves of raw destructive power, shaking the very foundations of existence. Stars exploded, planets trembled, and the very fabric of space-time seemed to tear apart. But Elias, drawing on the strength of every human who had ever lived, fought back with a ferocity that even the Harbinger had never encountered. He knew he couldn't match the Harbinger's raw power, but he didn't need to. Elias fought with the one thing that could not be destroyed, the human will. Every strike he landed was a defiance of everything the Harbinger represented. He did not just fight for himself. He fought for every person, every soul that had ever walked the earth. And with one final, devastating blow, Elias struck the Harbinger's core, shattering its essence. The universe held its breath as the entity, once thought invincible, crumbled into nothingness. The return of humanity. As the Harbinger faded, the galaxy began to stir. The Korlak, already weakened by their defeat, scattered into the void. The oppressed species of the galaxy, once ruled by fear and oppression, now looked to Elias with a newfound hope. The galaxy had been saved, not by armies or advanced weapons, but by the unyielding spirit of the last human standing. Elias had shown the universe that humanity was not just a footnote in history. It was a force that could not be erased, a force that could stand against the impossible and emerge victorious. The galaxy would remember the price of underestimating humanity, and they would never forget the name of the last soldier, the one who had made the universe remember fear. As Elias looked up at the stars, a new dawn breaking over the horizon, he knew that the fight was far from over. The galaxy would never forget the lesson of Earth, the lesson that no matter how dark the universe became, humanity would always rise. The story of the last soldier had only just begun.